Hey family, I want to teach you something. There's such things as hard distractions, horrible distractions, and harmless distractions. When I say harmless distractions, something that doesn't seem like it will harm you, but it's putting you out of alignment for what God wants you to do. And if we're not careful, we'll be seduced by it. For many of us, the enemy is using harmless distractions. God was having me ponder on many times where the enemy sent harmless distractions, and it really took me out of alignment. One thing about God, Romans 8:28, it does teach us that God will work all things out, okay, to glorify the kingdom. So whatever the enemy tries to throw your way, as long as you're in position internally with your faith, loving on him, he will have, that's what grace and mercy is. He will have his grace and mercy cover the fact that you blindly got out of alignment because you filled with compassion and empathy and love. So he understands that. But he also wants us to be prudent and want us to grow in wisdom and discernment. So he'll allow things to happen to people like me and other people who are not afraid to teach you and say, listen, be aware of harmless distractions. I remember, I'm not going to give the whole story, just briefly. I remember when God was calling me into ministry, I would do a lot of events and call meeting, conference meetings and things like that on the phone, and just so many things, and it was growing. And I noticed that every time the ministry is at its peak where it's growing, there's some type of distraction that will come. Some will be horrendous, and then some will be harmless, right? But he wanted me to focus on the harmless one to teach you guys how to make sure you don't fall victim. And I remember it was a family member that needed to be taken care of at this time, and because I was in and out of foster care, and that family member had always took me in and everything, and was growing older, and spouse had died, I just felt like it was the right thing to do, even though my husband had passed away about a couple of years previously, and my children were still little. They were still active in certain things, and what the family was doing to me, because they didn't really want to be bothered, they was throwing that person on me, and it was done, and it wasn't done from a pure place. You understand what I'm saying? And it was really throwing me out of loop for what I had going on. But because of my stance and my heart, I call myself doing the right thing. And what God showed me was, he said, listen, I want you to understand it was a distraction to derail you. Okay. There was many distractions that came to derail you when you on the peak of doing things for me. He said, but what I did was I used it because that person got to see Jesus through you. I never forget that when the spouse used to go to church and stuff, that person would sit in the car, would not even entertain the thought. And one day I always prayed and did Bible study and stuff like that with my children when they were young. I just really feel like it should come in the home first before you trying to teach it to the world. That's a whole nother sermon. But I remember one day that he called me in the room he was staying in at my house, and he said, could you pray for me? In that moment, I understood that no matter what the enemy thought he was doing, that God got the glory, because my whole life, I never heard him speak like that. I never heard him ask for prayer, talk about God, talk about Jesus. But in that moment, he was having a moment with God being in my house. You understand what I'm saying? So God got the victory. But I say this to say that sometimes we have to allow our strength and discernment to not allow us to be distracted. Although God will use that thing and God got the victory, and the person end up leaving and end up dying with another family member and stuff like that, because God knew that would have been too much on me and my children. At the end of the day, it was a distraction for what I had going on. The beautiful thing of the outcome was that they end up having an encounter with God. So God used that thing. He Romans 8:28 that thing. But I want to beckon you to assess your life and look in any areas where it looks like the enemy might be sending harmless distractions. And once you see that and you acknowledge it, block it. Block it, because what it does is it prolongs what God wants to do in your life, and it'll put you right around that mountain again. There's so much things that I could have been further in, but because my heart was filled with so much compassion, I was letting folks deter and pushed me out of alignment of what God had going on in my life. But because he's such a good God, Romans 8:28, he used that thing and he still gets the glory out of whatever the enemy tried to do. And that's the whole thing that we have to understand. Sometimes it's going to take a little longer and all of these things, but at the end of the day, it is about God getting the glory. So no matter what, I don't want you to be in your feelings. I don't want you to be sad. Just acknowledge the fact, okay, yeah, it was a distracting, but God still got the glory. And as long as God still gets the glory, we win. We win. We win. But God is trying to accelerate some things now. He wants us to be wise. And he's saying, listen, in order for me to accelerate some things on your behalf, I need you to be prudent. A prudent person looks into the future. A prudent person is wise. A prudent person looks and assesses a situation. And he's like, I don't want you to be bamboozled anymore. Because sometimes it is those things that just seem subtle that is really causing so much damage. I pray this bless you. I love you with a health. God bless. Follow me for more inspiration and truth.